Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Baker. I'm the managing partner of Alumni Ventures Sports Fund. Alumni Ventures is a network-powered venture firm helping accredited individuals become more successful venture investors. Welcome to today's webinar. We're pleased you're able to join us. We're speaking today about the sports fund, actually particularly esports. And as will become plainly obvious, this is for informational purposes and not an offer to buy or sell securities. Those can be found by reaching out to us and finding details about our fund, or at www.av-funds.com/disclosures. Before we get started, a few housekeeping reminders. You will be on mute the entire presentation. This webinar is recorded and will be shared after the event. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the webinar. We will do our best to answer all questions submitted or follow up with you via email. To ask questions, please enter your questions into the questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel and click submit.
Keaton. Great. Yeah, without further ado, I'll introduce myself quickly. I'm Keaton Nankerville. I work on the sports fund with Greg. Greg's basically done the introduction and welcome, a little overview of the sports fund, and then want to spend the bulk of the time talking with our guest, Marco Maru, who, fantastic guest for this topic, and hopefully we learn a lot more from him than listening to us talk. So, should be a fun conversation.
Quickly about Alumni Ventures, we're America's largest venture capital firm for individuals. We're looking to, just make this asset class available to individual investors. Historically, we've been formed around diverse portfolios and specific university alumni bases. The sports fund is new, where we're going industry specific. We're exclusively a follow-on investor. We've had over 10,000 people invest in our funds, over $1.3 billion in total capital in 1,300 portfolio companies. Many of them fit into the sports category. One of our sports focuses is on esports and gaming. So hence we wanted to give you the opportunity to know a little bit more about esports and gaming today. Again, our fund will be 15 to 20 companies. We'll put it together in 12 to 18 months, diverse across many themes in sports. And you can participate for $25,000 minimum or more, certainly welcome. And let's get into our conversation.
Yeah, so I'll do a brief intro, but I would love Marco to be able to introduce himself. But we have somebody joining us, Marco Maru, a esports industry vet. We were actually connected because he was already a portfolio founder of one of the sister funds at Alumni Ventures. His company M80 is a popular, growing esports team brand, kind of, I don't know, Marco, maybe full lifestyle, a company, kind of encompasses everything. But I'd love you to talk about it. But like I said, industry vet, has spent time in both online mobile gaming, created previously a social network that shared video highlights for gamers, exited several of these businesses. This is somebody who's seen multiple positions in the esports and gaming stack. And, in addition to being a founder of a company that we've invested in from Alumni Ventures, when we saw that Marco was in our network, we also tapped on him to be a venture scout for our team. So as we were putting together, as Greg mentioned, these pillars of the sports fund, esports and gaming being one of them, we knew we would have to get somebody who knew their stuff. And so we tapped on Marco. He was generous enough to also join us there. So somebody who's very linked to our network. And we appreciate kind of your participation across many facets of what we're doing. But would love for you to give a couple minutes on yourself, your history in this industry, and then we'll get into some questions on kind of the evolution of the industry.
Sure. You guys can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So hi, everybody who's ever, observing this or listening. I'm hoping I can, hopefully I'll give you some good and, interesting information that you probably can't find online, and a really kind of a comprehensive understanding of how to look at the esports space as a business and as an industry. On my perspective, I was an attorney here in Boston for about 9 years, practiced IP, also did a lot of startup work with some of the companies that spun out of the Media Lab at MIT. Got bored with law and decided to move into what was a passion of mine, which is gaming at the time. So I shut my law practice down, moved into the game industry in 2009. And over the last, I would say, 15 or so years, have worked in every facet of gaming, from game development early on in game publishing, to developing platforms for performance-based influencer marketing for YouTube and mobile games, with a company I had called Rooster, which we sold. And then we have a company called Framerate, which is a platform that allowed gamers to sell their highlight to brands as ad units, which is highly effective as well. And we also exited from that. Had an initial esports startup in 2020 that we used as kind of a launching pad into what M80 would ultimately become. So, fifth company, 3 exits, have done a lot of different things in gaming. Esports is far and away the most exciting and fastest way to grow a very compelling and engaging brand in what has quickly become the #1 consumer market in the world. Gaming does more in gross revenue than film and music combined, right? So gaming is a very, very big consumer market. It is a market that is, for the 30 and under demographic in particular, this is the #1 viewing sports activity, right? So when you look at the average age of sports viewer, they generally start at the very top, with, I think, MLB right now has the oldest average age of fan, unfortunately. And then you move into the NHL, horse racing, the NFL, the NBA, and then you hit like the UFC and the WWE, and you got the wrestling entertainment. But once you hit 30 and below, esports is really kind of the primary focus. And everyone in that demographic is either playing video games, watching other people play video games, or they're watching Netflix. And if you're an esports team, you're hitting 2 of those 3 bases, right? So what that really does is that gives us the ability to reach a very large, engaged consumer audience with our brand that we built. And in less than a year, we've already established close to 14 million in terms of total audience for M80. So it's a great position to be in. It's a great industry to be in. It's a very exciting industry, but it's also a relatively nascent industry that is, if you look at it from an outside perspective, like I can, because I've done other things, you understand kind of what's happened, good and bad, in esports over, I'd say, like the last 10 to 15 years, and what's kind of led us to where the industry is at this moment, which is a really critical moment for esports, right? So I think maybe what I'll also say is, for anyone who's not super interested, super in tune with how esports works versus traditional sports, probably the best way to think about what an esports organization looks like is, imagine a brand like Nike. But if Nike was not just a consumer brand, but Nike also had its own NFL team, its own NBA team, its own NHL team, its own MLB team that compete in multiple titles. That's really what an esports brand, esports organization looks like. So M80, for example, is our company and our brand, but we have teams that compete in multiple titles in different games that are published by different game publishers. But these are all teams of M80 that play in these games. And we happen to play in some of the most popular games in the world. We currently play, for anyone who's interested, we compete currently in Counter-Strike 2, Valorant, Rainbow Six Siege, Rocket League. We have a partnership with NASCAR for sim racing, so we have an e-sim racing team as well. And we'll be announcing a new title later this week that we're going to be entering into as well. So these are all teams that compete under our brand and reach audiences from all of these different games, respectively. So let's talk about esports as an industry, right? Really quick history lesson, especially if anyone's looking at this from the investment perspective. Keaton, did you want to say something, or am I?
No, I will jump in, but I'd love for you to give a primer. And again, like, looking to set the table, maybe. It was not intuitive to me that esports would become what it's become, right? I was a kid who grew up playing games, for sure. I often got teased when I was a kid because I like to watch people play games as much as I like to play them myself, and that it just wasn't as common back then. And so maybe, as you kind of describe the history of this, I'd love to understand some of the developments, whether they're technological or even social, that have kind of enabled the growth of esports to become spectator participant at that level.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it really ends up, where it really ends up becoming is, obviously gaming has become a very predominant part of people's lives over the last several decades, right? I mean, I'm 51 and I grew up playing games, so this is not a new phenomenon. Um, what has happened over the last 20 years or so is you've seen more money and more effort invested in developing competitive circuits around these games, generally by the publishers like Riot Games, Ubisoft, Epic Games. And then they recognize the significant revenue generation opportunities that revolve around the fan base for these games, right? So, you have stadiums now being filled with 10 to 20,000 people that go and watch these events live. Like you guys know, I'm going down to Mexico this weekend for our team that's competing. We just had a big event in Brazil that drew an average viewer base of over 500,000 people at a time watching the event. I think the League of Legends World Championships that just occurred a few months ago actually had higher viewership than the World Series. So clearly for 30 and under, this is the number one viewing category when it comes to sports, right? And so if you want to be the Yankees or the Celtics or the Red Sox of 30 and under, you're probably building an esports franchise right now. And most of these franchises have valuations anywhere from 100 million to 400 million, depends on the franchise and how long they've been around for, and also what their revenue is, right? Because most of these companies trade for around 10x revenue, right? Somewhere around that range. But looking at esports as an industry, I think what's probably important to understand is most of these initial esports teams that were built and launched over the last 10 to 15 years, most of them were primarily launched by YouTubers or former professional gaming individuals that wanted to start their own team eventually after they played. Or, like I said, big content creators or YouTube influencers that went out there and pitched this idea of sports, gaming sports, to investors, which a tremendous amount of capital was invested in esports and gaming over like the last 5 to 10 years. And many of these companies were raising anywhere from 50 to $100 million plus to build out their franchises. And I think what we saw a lot of was as this space was still very nascent and still figuring itself out, a lot of these entrepreneurs were not necessarily super experienced in how to build a linear business or how to manage budgets or how to do these things. And a tremendous amount of money was burned, right? Really kind of what happened here. And viewership continued to go up and do well. Esports is doing well, and many of these teams were making money, but they were burning, 2x or more of what they were actually able to make because they just weren't they weren't experienced entrepreneurs or experienced business people. So I think what has happened over the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years is you start to see people that have more business acumen that understand, have a passion for esports and gaming, but also have a passion for building successful businesses that understand cash flow, that understand what goes into building a successful business, long term and commercial relationships, and all those types of things that you need to address. What you've seen is a lot of these companies that have burned through their capital have gone back out to raise, and with the market being the way it is right now, with COVID hitting and some of those live events coming down, they've not been able to raise what they were raising 4 or 5 years ago. So that's turned some of these bigger companies into crisis mode, over the last year or so. And when you read a lot about like, oh, esports is having problems, esports is having issues, what's really happening right now is it's kind of a truing up process, if you will, where you've got a lot of the companies that have just not been managed effectively are either going to merge, consolidate, sell, or shut down. And what you're seeing is the companies that are being effectively managed, that are managing their capital and growing at the right scale, the right speed, investing their capital in the right places. Those companies are going to continue to grow and to scale and to take advantage of the opportunities that this segment or market allows us to engage with. Like I said, I talk with several senior advisors been around for a while, and what everybody really concurs on is that this is a great time to be a buyer in esports, and not such a great time to be a seller. But it's definitely a buyer's market right now if you can be. And the reason for that, if you look at the life cycle of esports and gaming, it went from being a very grassroots focused industry with massive rooms with hundreds of kids playing games against each other and competing and winning an event As people started to see the revenue opportunities, the game publishers began to take a much tighter control, and these became closed leagues that you couldn't compete in unless you paid a $25 million franchise fee in order to get into these leagues, which of course is only available to certain types of companies and people out there that can afford to do that. So you shut all these gamers out, and you had these very closed ecosystems with high franchise fees, very expensive to get into. And now, as an organization, once you've paid those franchise fees, you can't, if the game is not doing well or not having success or people don't want to play it anymore, you can't just get up and leave because you've invested a ton of money in that franchise, right? You bought it. But what you're seeing now is some of these closed leagues are opening up, and either the leagues are shutting down and the games are going back to a grassroots effort, but you're seeing a real push right now back toward a very communal type of esports event, open leagues where teams can compete in open circuits. And obviously there's a lot, there's a much higher funnel to get to the top of the food chain, but you can do it, right? So I think what's happened there is you're seeing a swing back toward marketing and advertising is really coming back pretty heavily this year to esports and gaming. You have the rise of sponsorships, which are very traditional to sport teams. You sell jersey placements, you sell the official training center facility naming rights of your arena, you sell the naming rights to some of your teams if you want. We have digital goods that are for sale in the actual games that the fans play. So if you go into one of the games that we compete in, you can go into the in-game store in the marketplace and you can buy our skin for your character or your weapon or your car, whatever it's going to be in a particular game. And we receive a revenue share from the game publishers based on those. And those digital goods can be sizable. I mean, most of these games will generate, several $1 million per year per skin, right? So, if you're in a number of titles, your teams are just like sports in that the more successful your teams are professionally, the more relevant you are, the more product you can sell, the more people want to buy your jerseys, the more people want to buy your digital goods, the more people want to watch your content on YouTube and different social channels. And the more viewership I get on those channels, the higher I can sell those products to sponsors and partners for. So in a lot of ways, it's a very linear business. It's just a very scalable linear business. And what's nice about esports is, I have 14 million fans that I can turn around and sell a product to or sell content to without having to spend a dollar, right? So, the Michael Jordans and the LeBron James and the Bo Jacksons of the world in esports, we have those star players that play under our banner, and we leverage their social engagement to reach their audience as well. That's how you build up a big audience in esports. But esports, like I said, you're seeing a contraction right now in the industry. A lot of bigger organizations that are just not properly. I kind of compare it to a cruise ship versus a jet ski. Like it's really hard to turn a cruise ship around when you realize something's not working right. But a jet ski, a smaller company or a startup or like a company like ours, we can move very quickly and identify a game that's not doing so well anymore. Okay, we can drop out of that game almost like overnight and pick up a different game that is currently active. Because the one constant in gaming is going to be that what people like to play will always change, right? This isn't like soccer or football or baseball, right? In that like people will play, football forever. The game, even the most popular esports titles, after 15 years, maybe 10, 15 years, they're going to be replaced at the top of the food chain by something else, and you have to be able to move into that. But what you're seeing right now is, is like I said, is the well-run companies and the companies that are strategic are identifying and acquiring assets. Building up a stockpile, if you will, keeping your burn low, and kind of getting through this bear market of esports, if you will, to the esports spring, which will probably be like sometime later this year. And then I think those companies are going to be able to seize on pretty exciting opportunities. I mean, our teams compete everywhere, all over the world, from Brazil to, this year alone, we've been to Brazil, Amsterdam, we've been to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia to compete over there. We've been to, everywhere from, many, many different places. So, esports is a global industry as well, not just a North American industry. So if anything, I would say it's even busier in Europe than it is in North America. But
Yeah.
great industry, exciting. If you like sports, again, and with the advent and growth of Web3 and blockchain, which is a really important technology for where esports is going, everyone is really situated very well right now.
That's great. So you mentioned a few times kind of, I think, an analogy, especially in spaces that are new. Historically, Alumni Ventures has been a very diversified investor. I use analogies to kind of bridge knowledge gaps. And I grew up in what I'm calling analog sports. So like I always try and use those analogies to frame my conceptualization of esports. And as we've studied this a little bit, we see both a sportification of gaming and a gamification of sports. So like an example of that would be, I'm watching an NBA game and they can overlay some graphic that shows, where Steph Curry shot his three from. That's very reminiscent of my NBA 2K screen or something like that. How have you seen these things translate back and forth, and maybe more focus on how have you seen gaming as it's become more popular? And like you said, this younger audience is more native speaking in this type of communication. Like, how have you seen it influence sports production, sports consumption?
Well, I think the important thing to also talk about is so many professional athletes today are big gamers, right?
Yeah.
All of these athletes grew up playing games as well. So, for example, one of my co-owners in my ownership group is Daniil Medvedev, who is the #3 men's tennis player in the world. Daniil is also a massive esports fan and also very competitive gamer that loves this stuff, takes it very seriously. I've worked with several NFL athletes, NBA athletes. We're talking to a couple people in boxing right now and the UFC. So there's a huge crossover between professional athletes that play these games and that watch these games, right? So I definitely think you see a lot of things in broadcast these days for traditional sports that really are coming from gaming, like you said, like 2K and Madden.
Mm-hmm.
And then in esports, the esports broadcasts are, in a lot of ways taken from, traditional sports as well. But the formats can be a little bit different. So, for example, in traditional sports, most people watch, if you're not at the game, you're watching it on traditional, cable TV. In esports, most of these events, if you're not at the arena, you're watching it live streamed on Twitch or YouTube or one of the streaming platforms, which also support chat mechanics. So everyone's in chat, and that's natural behavior for gamers. Some people even play a game while they're watching the stream. So that's been a really, that's just part of it. But yeah, there's definitely a bit of a blend. And again, like some things that work in, esports, are different from traditional sports as well, right? But the viewing audience is for 30 and under it's just, like I said, esports is only getting bigger. It's never getting smaller. So it's not, because people are only getting younger, right? But it's, I think that again, like, what you're seeing right now is, from a revenue perspective, every year is like, the revenue is doubling or increasing significantly in digital good sales and your audience, and the engagement level of this audience. They're very social savvy. So obviously they're on, all the social media channels and formats. That's predominantly where we reach out to our audience. You don't need to have the big infrastructure like the Cowboys to run an esports team, right? You see esports teams that are organized with much, I think, like smaller resources basis. It's what allowed us to start up an esports team that within a year became one of the biggest in North America. So, it's while at the same time reach the same size audiences, right? And we did over 100 million impressions last year with content with people, and that was just in our first year alone, right? We did, I think, 2.2 million in revenue in our first year. We're projected to do around 7, I think, in year 2. So, we're scaling it, we're growing it. We want to be mindful of like, how we manage our burn and how we run the business. But it really is, in a lot of ways, it is a linear business, right? Like the companies that are just kind of pie in the sky and they don't think about the future and they don't think about how they deploy their capital are the ones who are having difficulty right now. I think the companies that are managing their cash flow, managing their player salaries, managing the expectations and and identifying the revenue sources and getting the best partnerships. All the bigger brands are in esports now. I mean, everything from automotive to consumer product goods. Most major leagues or teams have, several brands. We have several sponsorships ourselves. So yeah, I mean, it's really about understanding the business, I think, and just being able to scale that up and grow.
So as somebody deeply embedded in this space at this point, I mean, I mentioned earlier you're helping us as a scout, which is fantastic. And I think putting your scout hat on, you as an operator in this space, what are things that you look for in terms of companies that add value and therefore become investable opportunities? Maybe there are other brands, but there's also other tools that are needed or infrastructure that's needed. What are the things that, as somebody who's leading one of these brands, you go, man, we need this solution, or this would be the solution that if we found it, it would really push things forward in a pretty significant way?
Again, like on this note, it really kind of comes back to the more traditional sports analogy, right? Where I think winning is paramount because some people will say, oh, winning doesn't really matter, but winning matters a lot, right? Because if your team doesn't win, nobody cares. And if your team wins, then you have a chance to build a successful business on top of that. It doesn't guarantee you're going to build a successful business, but you have a shot. But if you're not winning, you're probably just struggling for ends meet, trying to kind of break even and see if you can break through and get into a big event or have a successful team. But if you're winning and you've got a Yankees or you've got a Celtics, then all of a sudden you've got a really passionate fan base. You've got people that will come out and buy your products and support your players. You've got brands that want to be partnered with you and have brand association with you. You have investors that want to be a part of that and recognize the opportunity for growth. So for us, it's really about having a winning culture, building a good brand. The marketing is obviously highly important here as well when we're trying to promote. And what would Nike be without marketing, right? So it's like how we market. MAD is really important. We in our case, we try to be very we try to be very not adaptable. We like to try to be very relative for our fan base. So we want them to be able to relate to our players. We don't have massive superstars that are untouchable. We feel like we engage with our audience. I engage with our audience. Our fan, like even when we sell our merchandise, we make a point of not selling like $1,000 jackets because I want like it's more like Shackles and he did a sneaker. I want kids to be able to afford one of our hoodies or one of our jerseys. So we have a set margin that we want to hit, and we're going to sell it for 2x, whatever that is. And if that's a lower price point than people expect, then that's okay because we want our fans to be able to buy the stuff. So yeah, I mean, and again, like just like sports, we have mental coaches, we have performance coaches, we have dietitians. These kids generally eat terribly. They DoorDash everything, right? So we have to manage, and that's an important thing to mention too, where there is a differentiator is the average age for an esports athlete is probably anywhere between 16 and 23. So you've got some young people in here that are making real money, anywhere from $500,000, $1 million+ a year. And they need some security and support, and they need some people that are going to provide structure for them. And they need to, like there are certain needs that they have, right? You don't want to, you see a lot of burnout in this industry, again, because of the pressure. The pressure is very real. This is not a high school basketball tournament, right? This is like I said, this weekend alone, we have guys playing with $3 million on the line. Right, a lot of pressure for young people, and you want to support them, and you want to kind of ease that burden as much as you can. But at the same time, it's part of the business, right? So, and it's just like sports. If you don't play well, you generally lose your job, right? So you get replaced. So,
Sure.
But again, like one of the most important things about esports, I took this lesson from watching a team called Team Liquid. Team Liquid has been around for 20 years. They're probably one of the most successful, well-run esports organizations in history. They have major HQs in Amsterdam, Brazil, Los Angeles. The founders are great guys and very smart. And one of the things that they did very well that I think allowed them to build what they built is they have Liquipedia now. They have multiple different businesses that operate under Team Liquid. So it's not just the sports will get you to a certain point, but then it becomes what kind of businesses can we build underneath the branding of what we have, right? So you have to build vertical businesses within the gaming sphere that you think can be effective and can make money. So for us, we look at heavily right now at digital goods, consumer product goods, right? We're talking with multiple brands and different CPG categories right now, not just having them sponsor us, but actually launching a product together, right? And branding it, because influencers these days can sell Mr. Beast does $2 million plus a week in Feastable bars, right? Every week, right? So if you have that audience and that that identity, you can sell consumer product goods very carefully. We're looking at categories like game publishing, which we think we're perfectly suited to do as well. So it's just about being smart, and I think building a diverse business when it comes to your revenue streams, not being too dependent on any one revenue stream.
Yeah, I mean it's super smart. It may overlap with this next question, but kind of my final question, I'll turn it to Greg for some thoughts and questions from the audience. But you've been around this for, let's say, 15 years. You mentioned Team Liquid's been around for 20. So like, we've seen great progress in esports, but taking from today on, what does the next 15 years look like? You mentioned a young audience, so the audience that's now under 30 will grow up with all this, and eventually they'll be 40, 50, and this is a very normal thing for them. And the audience younger than them will probably be more into it. So like, how does the future of esports evolve?
Gosh, it's going to be fast. I'll tell you guys that much. Like, it's going to happen really, really fast. There's a huge amount of capital coming into esports in the MENA region. In particular, Saudi Arabia has identified it as one of the key economic drivers for their audience as well. It's going to be, like I said, it's going to be fast, because gaming really kind of has supplanted television and movies and other forms of entertainment for how you spend your time. So most kids these days, if they've got 2 or 3 hours a day, like in free time, to do whatever they want, they're going to play games, right? They're not going to watch a movie or watch TV. They're going to play video games.
I like that go outside wasn't even listed there.
Yeah, I mean, like, touch grass, right?
Yeah. Don't make me use my bad parenting anecdote here.
Yeah. Balance is important though. Like I can only speak from my own experience, but a lot of our players, they play soccer, they play other sports. Like, we bring us, like, when one of my teams travels, we always bring a soccer ball with us, and we always find a soccer field wherever we are, whether it's Brazil or Copenhagen. And between matches, breaks, we all go out. We always find a Brazilian team or a European team that will play with us, and we play soccer together, right? So like, we always, we're really big on that balance. You got to have that balance. You can't just sit at the computer all the time.
Awesome. Greg, do you have any kind of questions lingering for you, and then anything from the audience, of course?
You talked about different revenue streams and kind of matching those, and I think you think about the Cowboys, which kind of goes against your thing. They haven't done anything good in a long time, but they're still making a lot of money. Their revenue is coming from the NFL contract, a little bit from people coming to the game, merchandise. What are the major splits and relative percentages for you? Is it the winning this weekend? Is that a major driver, or are you more driven by Twitch funds?
So prize money, like winning a tournament, right? The vast majority of that money goes to the players. That's just kind of the standard in esports. Is you're generally giving anywhere from 70 to 90% on average to the players of that, and the organizations are keeping a small percentage of it. So that is never where you're going to make your revenue or model your business around. Also, because you don't know if you're going to win or not. But what you can model around is digital good sales. Like, for example, this event that we have this weekend, the money that we would potentially make from that isn't related to the prize pool per se. There's some prize pool there, probably like low 6 figures. But the money that we would make from that event is related to sticker revenue in that game. Because if we qualify for this major event, our organization will have stickers in a sticker pack that is sold for the major, included with all the other teams that have made it. and then the total amount of money generated from that sticker pack is split between those teams, and that would roughly, again, that would come out to several $1 million per team. I think the last sticker pack in Counter-Strike from the last major that was played, I think did almost 150 million, something like that in revenue. So that is something that we look at, and then the content that we can control, we can produce, we can put out, we can do a partnership with Netflix, we can do a partnership with Hulu. Those are the things that we can really control and focus on as revenue drivers, and the prize pool is just really mostly, like I said, for the players.
All right. We've had some questions submitted from the audience, so I'll ask a few of those.
Okay.
What are retention results in online gaming due to gamification? How is that driven? I'm assuming they're asking, how is that driven the amount of people actually playing games, the esports side of it?
So, online gaming has great retention. I've worked in mobile gaming, right, where your retention rates, if you had a fraction of your players after 30 days, you were like, woohoo, yes, we kept 20% of people. This is amazing. Gaming has great retention. Esports has great retention. The gamification of gaming is kind of an interesting way to look at it, but the reality is not every game can be an esport as well, right? And esports is just a part of gaming. Esports is a very engaged, hyper engaged sliver of gaming as a whole, which is a big pie, is much bigger than just esports by itself. But but the people that game, they also watch esports, right? So you can reach that audience, and you can you can, like I said, you can promote your products and conduct your business with those people. But it's definitely a growing category.
Do you see the gap between traditional sports and esports connecting?
I think it has a lot of ways, right? You see a lot of professional sports and esports. We got Daniil in our company. Other companies have other athletes. Every major soccer player, from Messi to Vinny Jr., they're all co-owners of esports organizations. So you've seen a lot of this connection and crossover already between sports and esports. A lot of professional esports teams are owned by professional sports teams, right? So you've got the Dan Gilberts of the world, the Warriors, the Cowboys. I could probably name 20 if I sat here, 20 to 30 professional sports teams that have an esports play. And if they don't have an esports play and you're on this call, call me. Because I may sell my company to you, but you should have a play in this space, right? But it's impossible if you're a professional sports team to not have a play in esports right now. It's just doesn't make any sense.
But you don't see the huge growth in esports being FIFA and Madden.
FIFA is a very popular esport in Europe. It's not as popular in the US, primarily probably because Europe is a much heavier soccer country. Madden does not have a huge esports scene at all. And that really comes back to, how does the publisher of the game look at esports? For some publishers, esports is its own business vertical that they're going to invest capital into to scale and grow and build up and really turn into its own business. A great example is Riot Games. Riot Games invests a tremendous amount of money and effort into building up the esports for the games that they develop and publish. Some other publishers look at esports as a marketing line item, right? Or a press junket, if you will, just a way to show off the game so they can sell more SKUs in the store and just sell the game. And they're not really going to take a lot of risks on esports or spend a lot of money on the esports side. I won't name names here, but I think some of the sports games out there are kind of in that bucket, right? Where it's fun to have a little circuit, but we're not going to get too crazy with with the actual structure in the league. For me as a team, I can't be in an esport that has one event a year or two events a year. I can't pay a player's salary. But a game like Counter-Strike, where players are playing all year long, maybe they get a month break during the whole year, we can substantiate that, right? So it really depends on the game.
Okay. Next question, what is the minimum investment? I believe that must be in our fund, which is 25K. If there are any other questions that people want to ask, this would be a great time to ask. But you know, it's being the old guy on the call. You know, people used to watch me play Miss Pac-Man and put quarters down to knock me off the board, but it's completely different now. With and
Yeah.
where are most of your athletes coming from?
You know, we have, you know, I have players from Europe, Brazil, North America, Canada, MENA, right? We scout worldwide. There's talent worldwide. You know, you can get a visa to be an esports professional athlete now, right? Which is another example of why it's a sport, right? I mean, all of our players come in on B1 visas, right? But we get our players from all over the world. Obviously, a lot of players in North America. It really depends on the game as well, right? You know, Counter-Strike is heavily European. You know, other titles might be more North American, but it really depends. You got to be able to find players anywhere in the world.
Okay. There's no particular hotbed for you?
I mean, if you want if you're looking for a great Counter-Strike player, you're probably looking in like CIS regions right now. You know, that's where like when they're young. Brazil is a hotbed of talent for development in esports. There's so many good young players that are just dying to play the game and come out of Brazil. Is another great region. Denmark seems to put together great Counter-Strike players. If you want, you know, most of the fighting game community is worldwide, so it really depends on the game.
All right. Well, Marco, thank you very much for your time, and good luck this weekend. And
Yeah.
hopefully the team will qualify to make it to Europe.
If anybody wants to see how we're doing, I mean, if you follow us on Twitter at M80GG, which is our Twitter handle, you know, you'll be able to see links to when our teams are playing. I know our Rocket League team is playing on Friday night. Our Counter-Strike team plays throughout the weekend. You'll be able to see all those events and those matches and track those results.
So everything go through Twitter. They might live stream them, and there'll be links there for people who are interested.
Usually there's links for Twitch. Yeah.
Great.
Is there, you know, if I click on a link for Twitch this weekend to watch, is there a admission fee, or is that?
No, it's all free.
All right. Great.
I have to sit through a couple commercials, kind of like old TV, you know, like you have to actually watch commercials once in a while. That's kind of what Twitch is now. The bigger the stream, you're going to get a couple commercials. So, you know, we can live through it.
All right. I know a lot of Twitch for individuals is subscription, so.
Yep. But cool. Well, listen, it was great talking with you guys. I'm excited to have AV in the company as well, obviously.
Quick last question popped in here. How is esports adapting to people with disabilities?
You know, it's interesting. There's a lot of different esports titles that are doing things for disabilities, including like, you know, for example, like a few of the games have really made, you know, they've developed like settings for colorblind players to be able to play. There are several controllers that are built for people with disabilities that support their ability to play and compete in some of these games as well. So I think there's, you know, game publishers at large understand that that's an important part of making a game that's going to be accessible for people. And I think that, you know, I think actually Apex Legends also has developed a setting for people that are deaf to be able to have visual cues of what's happening around them versus what they would normally hear within the game, which is a really innovative approach as well. But yeah, definitely a part of, I think, the long-term vision of the developers.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and again, good luck this week.
Thank you, Marco. Travel safe.
All right, guys, take it easy. Bye.